Another episode of Roster Rescue. I am your host, Zack Zander. Today we are talking 22 NFL Draft wide receiver rankings. I got a friend, Mike, Dirty Mike. How do you want, however you want to be called, my
Okay.
man? How are you doing today? And tell everybody about yourself a little bit and where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can find me on Twitter at FF_Dirty Mike. You can just call me Mike, though. It's fine. Just a big fan of the other guys.
It's not
Um,
Dirty Mike, man. Come on, Dirty Mike sounds so fun.
yeah. But you can find my work at Campus to Kin, our website, campuskin.com. We are the leading company when it comes to college fantasy football. And we have a little fun in our company, too. It's a big juggernaut of heavy hitters. Yeah.
Oh, you got the lineup. You do. You got Felix. You got Alfred. Oh my God, who Austin? Austin's
Awesome.
back in cleanup, man. Austin was one of my favorite guests I've ever had on the show. We talked about Campus to Kent for like 2.5 hours last August, and
Wow.
and I still had more to go with. Like we could have did an 8 hour show. I love picking his brain on the Campus Kent setting and on just Devi and college football in general. It's my go to. But today we are going to focus just on the wide receivers in the 22 NFL draft. It's a would you consider it a wide receiver heavy draft, like compared to the running backs and the quarterbacks just in the fantasy positions this season? Do you think wide receiver would be the deepest position?
Yeah, absolutely. And just comparing it to other classes too, I actually do think this class is deep. I think it's deeper than last year's, just not as top heavy. But I think there's going to be I honestly believe 10 to 12 guys here will be consistent options at the NFL level. And from fantasy point, I think you're going to have, quite a few options here. I really do.
Yeah, it's a deep class at the top for sure. Like there's gonna be there might be 10 players drafted in the top 50 picks. I mean, I think
Okay.
that's not out of control at all. And the getting into the end of day two, you could by the end of the third round, you could have 15 wide receivers picked. There's not as many like fourth round guys that I'm getting really excited about after
Right.
my like top 15, 16. It's kind of like, man, it kind of falls off, but it's very top heavy and it's really a mixed match of every type of wide receiver. You got the speedsters, you got the big body guys, you got the little slot guys that will put you on skates on a moment, and then you have a couple of your studs that can do a little bit of everything. So let's start it out. What's your wide receiver one in this class? Because everybody kind of has a little different one, and talk about that compared to your tier one guys. Is it really close to your wide receiver two, three, and so on?
Yeah. So Treylon Burks is my wide receiver one. I think he's going to be. He's a big guy. He's a yak monster. But when you watch him play, like actual watching film play, he doesn't do anything flashy, but he somehow always finds ways to succeed. It's he just runs by competition, but he's also 225 pounds, so he has like the beef to just stiff arm guys like he's a running back as well. So I think Treylon Burks might be like raw, but the way he's winning now, because he's already winning at an SEC level, and he has more to grow. So I love him. I love his game style. I think he's if I had to bet on one guy in this class being a wide receiver one at the next level as in like top 12 option for fantasy, it would be Treylon Burks.
I agree with you. Now, before the combine, I was expecting a really big combine from Treylon Burks because of the way he dominated in the SEC and he won with just freak physical attributes that I thought were I thought he was going to have like a DK Metcalf type combine, maybe not a 4.33, but I was expecting him to be in the 4.4s, jump out of the gym type thing, and it just did not happen. So he's one of those guys you're really going to have to rely on the tape, and he is my wide receiver one, but it gave me a little bit of it concerned me a little bit. What about you?
Okay. I wasn't too concerned about it. I personally don't put a lot of stock in the combine. Like if they do well, that's great. But I don't really. But if they do really poorly, that's probably more what I'm looking at. We have an analytic team here at Campus Kin, and they measure miles per hour on the field. So that's kind of how we measure game speed. And so Treylon Burks ran 22.6 miles per hour. Probably was his fastest this last year. Even at the 40, they had him at the end of his like 40 meter, like at the end, he was running 22.8 miles per hour. So he might just be a guy that takes a little bit to get there, but he does have those burners too. And just to put it like in a comparison, Jonathan Taylor, everyone watches NFL knows who Jonathan Taylor is. He runs in the upper 22s. So Treylon Burks has that same game speed as Jonathan Taylor.
And I go back to the game tape also, and 100% the way he dominated in 2020 and 2021 in the SEC versus, I mean, I'm NFL type defensive players. You do not get this type of player in the Pac-12, the Big 12, even the Big 10. Like, he's doing it against some corners that are going to be drafted, that you're going to see playing on Sundays, along with safeties, linebackers, and he is just a physical freak compared to them, like almost a man amongst boys at 225. Are you buying the Debo comparison? Because I hear that too much, and I don't want to just put every running back that can, or wide receiver in the backfield that can run after the catch. I think Debo's a little bit more special at that than a lot of people. He's someone I would try to keep on the outside, refine his route tree, and see his potential as a wide receiver one on the outside. What do you think?
I see more of an AJ Brown myself. Debo is special. Debo's also just an absolute outlier. Debo's a fifth-year declare. Like, I don't know if people really realize that. Drafted in the early second as a fifth year. He was constantly injured, not only throughout his high school career, but his collegiate career. This is like the first year we saw Debo stay healthy all year. So I don't really know if I can ever comp someone to Debo because he's just such a unicorn, just like Tyreek Hill is. But yeah, I see a lot more of AJ Brown in him than I do see Debo.
100%. That's the comparison. It's perfect. I was thinking maybe DK Metcalf, Josh Gordon. I don't think he's a top end fast speedster like a Josh Gordon, but it's very similar. This guy can dominate on the outside, and yes, get him the ball in space. We're watching an Alabama game where they are getting him the ball in space a little bit, and it's against the competition. And there he goes right there. You see him just a physical freak, just shove somebody to the ground, and you're not going to see that like too much in this class. Like he is the after the catch physical 220-pound guy. We have a lot of other type of wide receivers in this class, but I think he separates himself because of that. And I can't wait to see where he lands. Any quick predictions before we move on? Where do you think Treylon would succeed at in the NFL? Where do you think he goes in the first round, or does he go in the first round?
Yeah, I do think he goes in the first round. I think he's probably going to be around like the upper teens, 20s. And now I have to look back at the draft, but I believe that's like around the Patriots, the Raiders, who I think just traded their pick. I'm not very up to the Green Bay Packers. So I think he's going to go in the middle of the first is where I'm kind of predicting. And so I'm just hoping he gets by all those teams that don't know what they're doing yet, like the Eagles. So I like him to go to a quarterback who's throwing the ball, but yeah.
Yeah, 100%. We do not want any of these top end wide receivers going to Philadelphia. I like Jalen Hurts maybe as much as anybody, but he's not going to facilitate multiple wide receivers. We were talking about that a little bit before the show. He wasn't
absolutely.
even facilitating Devonte to where he needs to be. So, anybody else in the same tier? Is he a mile ahead of your wide receiver too?
Yeah, he kind of is. I wouldn't know if I say a mile, but he's pretty solidified in that role. My wide receiver too, if you don't mind me rolling right into it, is going to be the same as yours, which is Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson, I think he's just an operator, he's a smooth operator. But unlike Burks, I think Garrett Wilson, the next level, is going to need volume to make a difference. I kind of view him more as like a Stephon Diggs. So he's going to need to go to a situation where he's getting passed to a lot, seeing that 10 plus targets a game. But he can make moves where I think Treylon Burks could be more of a house call more often than Wilson is. So I do have Burks way ahead, but I'm super happy if I get Garrett Wilson too on my roster.
I was really surprised. He was under 6 foot. Like I had him pegged at 6'1" his whole college career. He more I think about it, he reminds me of an Odell Beckham coming out of LSU. I think the size, he can play above the rim a little bit. I mean, he can be that guy, but he doesn't make his money on that. He makes his money on creating separation. He's going to be a little bit more, I think, draft dependent. Like I'd really hate him in Philadelphia, but he's somebody that could go to Green Bay and just jump into that wide receiver one spot. So
Absolutely.
With that Raiders pick, if they did go Garrett Wilson, somebody has to catch balls from Aaron Rodgers. Seriously. Garrett Wilson would fit that mold pretty well. He's not as big as Devonte, but their games, he creates separation a lot of the same ways.
Absolutely. And we're going to find a way to fall in love with whoever goes to the Green Bay Packers. No matter who it is, we're going to find a way.
Absolutely, 100%. Anybody else in your tier one? Because Treylon Burks and Garrett Wilson are my tier one guys, and then it drops down to obviously the next tier. I think those two guys are the most solid, can't miss prospects that do almost everything well. Garrett Wilson showed really, really good speed, the route tree, the hands. I mean, he's a complete guy. Maybe not an after the catch wide receiver that's going to do the stuff that Treylon Burks does, that because he's so physical and nobody else is doing that. And Treylon is the guy that can do it in the slot. He can do it on screens. He can win outside. He needs to refine himself a little bit, but if he can, improve a little bit in that aspect of his route running and his route tree, like he can be very special with his size. Anybody else close to those two in your tier one?
Yeah, I got Jameson Williams in my tier one too. And I kind of flip-flopped him with Garrett Wilson in my head quite a few times until the ACL injury. I think James Williams is doesn't get as enough credit for his route running as everyone else does in this class. I do think he is a decent route runner. He has a little bit of an issue with catching balls outside of his frame, but I'm talking about like a small issue. And everyone knows that drops don't correlate like to fancy production, so really don't care too much about that. But his speed and what he's done is just amazing. I mean, not to sell a narrative, but he transferred over from Ohio at like the middle of the summer, so he missed spring camp, all that stuff, and he goes in and he takes over the like wide receiver one duties for Alabama within like the first 3-4 weeks of playing for them. So he just needed the opportunity to shine and absolutely just dominate once he did that. So I like Jameson Williams, and I think he could be, a wide receiver one for a roster, and he just needs to get space, and that's it.
Yeah, talking about campus to Canton, I got him in like 20 something round. I don't. I'd have to look back.
It's robbery.
Absolute flyer at the end of maybe not the complete end because campus Canton goes like 45 rounds, but it had to be in the 20s, maybe even the 30s. Like Jameson Williams, it was forever. He was a forgotten man at Ohio State. He splashed in that Clemson game. I was like, who the fuck is that? I was like, who is this guy outrunning everybody on Clemson? And then he transfers and goes to Alabama, a perfect spot, even though I thought, Mechie, who we're going to talk about a little bit, would be the clear-cut number one. And it just did not happen like that because week one against my guys, I mean, he torched us like a 91-yard touchdown pass in the second quarter where two different safeties had angles on him, and he just showed speed I haven't seen since – like a Tyreek Hill-esque like type player.
Right.
And my comp for him, we talked about it, is Mike Wallace. I think he is a clear-cut, like exact Mike Wallace on the football field in the NFL. He's a guy, as long as he comes back healthy, it is 2022, but still we have to be a little precautious that he's going to be the same type of player he was before that knee injury, which is terrible because he probably maybe he would be my wide receiver 3 and in tier 1 if it wasn't for that injury, but guess what? It did happen. You have to be a little bit weary of it. So he's a little bit farther down on my list. He's my wide receiver 5, but it's a very close tier 1 and tier 2. I mean, you could make it just one big tier. But J-Mo's right there. My number 3 guy is George Pickens. Where does George Pickens fall on your list? Am I a little too bullish on him because I love the film he put out his freshman season? You wanted a little bit more his sophomore, but the way he came back from his ACL injury and how he did look at the combine at 6'3", 200 pounds. I love the way he runs routes. I mean, he runs, really crisp, hard routes, and he has the wingspan and the go up and get it. I mean, where we at on George Pickens?
Yeah, I love George Pickens too. And I'm glad you brought up his ACL too, because no one's talking about it in the offseason. No one seems to be worried about his ACL because he came back and showed that he still has it those last couple games. The production is like a little bit disappointing from like the analytical profile that people want to look at. And that's just, I think that's really more just how Georgia plays. Georgia wants their defense to win. They want to run the ball up. They don't really want to throw the ball the way these other teams do. So I love George Pickens. I think he's going to be a steal because people just aren't in on him. But out of like the actual wide receiver 1 potential alphas that are in this class, he's got to be close to the top of that list. Like Treylon Burks is definitely an alpha, and we'll talk about Drake London soon here too. But then like it's George Pickens for me. Like those 3 guys are like the top tier alpha wide receivers. And he's got the athleticism too to excel at the next season. He's got that mentality. And I think that mentality is hard to find too. He has that dog mentality. Like he thinks he's the best player on that field, and it shows too when he plays.
And we're watching a little film right here, and we're going back to the SEC. I mean, that was on Derek Stingley. He just had a reception, and in 2019, I mean, the best of the best that went up against Stingley they weren't winning. Even we go back to the film on Chase, like George Pickens jumped out for me actually in that LSU SEC championship game because he's the only person I've ever seen get open on Stingley that season. I mean, we go back to Seth Williams from Auburn, who I actually was a little bit higher than most on, and even like Justin Ross before his injury and T. Higgins in the national championship games, Stingley was shutting him down. And Pickens, I was seeing actually create separation on him, and we've seen the body control. And I don't want to keep going back to Green Bay, but man, does someone mirror Devonte Adams' size and route running? George Pickens is really the same type of guy, and he would be so interesting to the Green Bay Packers in the first round. I think, man, he could leapfrog Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson in the fantasy rankings for me, and I'm not joking.
I do have to say this. There's some negative. He does get lazy sometimes. I think when he's not like involved in the play and he knows it. Because I do see like his route running is crisp, and then there's other times where he's just doesn't even want to sell it. You know what I'm saying? He's just kind of giving that 50% effort. And so I wish I didn't see that on his tape. But like besides that, when he plays, this dude's a baller. I'm sorry, he's gonna be a stud at the next level. He's my wide receiver. I'm gonna say like 5, but like honestly, like I like him a lot. And come landing spot, I'm probably gonna move him up.
So we have JMO and Pickens kind of flip flopped. Do you have Drake London at 4?
Yeah, I do. I do have Drake London at 4.
That's why I brought this guy on. I was like, man, everything I see you put out on Twitter, I was like, I really agree with that. I really agree with that. I really agree with that. I was like, I'm gonna get him on the podcast. We're gonna find something we don't agree on. I guarantee that. But as of right now, we're along the same wavelength with these wide receivers. I value the size, 6'3". I value the size of Drake London at 6'4". He really reminds me of like a carbon copy of Cortland Sutton, above the rim type guy, former basketball player. But Pickens does it for me a little bit better because I think he creates the separation and he's a little bit more QB proof. So if is the guy that maybe ends up with a more of a average type quarterback, I think he can still produce because of the way he wins on the outside. I mean, when he's on, you are right. He's shown some laziness, some stuff you don't love to see, but when he's on, he runs violent routes.
Yeah, when he's on, dude. He is just insane.
And we're seeing the plays against some of the better, like we know how great that secondary was for Cincinnati. We're seeing him against Alabama, Auburn, LSU. He's played against the top tier competition in college football. And that's something I look at in wide receivers because a lot of guys can beat guys from, Central Florida or even, UTEP, whoever, any college that's not in the SEC. When I see those SEC jerseys, man, it makes me pay a little bit more attention because I know the type of quality of player they're playing against.
Yeah, it's level of competition has to be factored in. Like it's factored into my process. I actually do give like a bump to the Ohio State, the Alabama receivers because some of those guys have to like wait their turn before they can actually hit the field. So I do give a bump for them in my process. But I'm with you, dude. That's why I like the Senior Bowl, for example, for these G5 prospects because I watch Skye Moore torch the MAC all year, but we'll talk about him later. Getting a little ahead here, but I want to see if he can do it against like Roger McCreary and all those other top corners, Kobe Bryant, whatever else is out there. So I'm with you, dude. Level competition is very important to factor in.
Skye Moore is a good one. We are going to get into him because he could, it could go a couple different ways with him. Because we didn't get to see him at the Senior Bowl. We did get to see Jalen Tolbert. We did get to see Christian Watson. I think that's going to be a little bit more of another tier down.
Right.
I want to know, talking about.
Can we get? I jumped ahead. Can we get back to Drake London though? Because I jumped ahead.
Oh yeah, Drake London. Yeah. He's my wide receiver 4. I gobbled him up in C2C and Devi last year, like in the 4th round, and he just came out and balled. If it wasn't for his broken ankle, I would have won my C2C championship. Still pissed about that. Whoever won that, damn it. But anyway, Drake London he's going to be solid. And I mean, I think he has as few as question marks as any wide receiver really in this draft. I just don't know I see the upside of a Treylon Burks or a George Pickens. What are you thinking?
So I put him in my wide receiver 4 here. I do have a lot of negatives to say. I put him up here because mostly I factor in analytics into my film grades. It's like a 60-40 split, but he scored extremely high for analyticals for me. Like he's, I think, the number one analytical wide receiver coming out. But I tend to prefer prospects that know how to separate with their feet rather than their size. The size is a big bonus for me, but I don't think I don't think Drake London does that. I think he likes to separate physically off the top of his routes, and I think he can bully Pac-12 corners all day. I just don't know if he can do that at the NFL level, and I think, which doesn't make him a contested catch receiver, but that's kind of in my head. That's how I profiled him. And if I look back at the contested catch wide receivers that have gone in the first round in the past, you got like N'Keal Harry, you got Devonte Parker, and these guys just don't succeed. Like that play style just, I mean, it's necessary. An NFL team needs that type of player, but for fantasy, they don't become relevant. And the 1 year that Devonte Parker was relevant is because he had a 89% win rate at contested catches, and that was with Fitzpatrick.
See, that's kind of scaring me. I mean, when you're bringing up N'Keal Harry and Devontae Parker, we're talking about first round busts that are sort of. I mean, when we're talking about contested catches, that puts a lot of production into the quarterback's hands. So Drake London on Green Bay is a lot different than Drake London on Philadelphia or Washington or anything like that. I mean, it just is. When you have Aaron Rodgers throwing backdoor fades to you, it looks beautiful, but that's not in Jalen Hurts' makeup or any of these rookie quarterbacks, or almost nobody other than Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and a few other guys are going to be able to make all those throws every single time. And he's going to have to play a little muscle ball, a little power forward, and he can. I love, back in 2020, he was running a lot of his routes out of the slot. And I'm like, who's this huge guy? Before I really knew who he was, running really crisp routes out of the slot and running seam routes. I always thought it was a tight end, but last year he dominated on the outside, and he's put out enough great tape with his size and his contested catch rate. Like, he's a solid first round pick for me, but he could get a little dicey in some of these fantasy drafts if he ends up in the wrong place.
Yeah, so I didn't like his 2020 tape because I saw a lot of three wide receiver sets to the side, and the other two wide receivers would run routes to draw off coverage off him. And since he was in the slot, guys don't want to press the slot receivers that much either. So I thought he was schemed open a lot, which showed that he didn't have the ability to get open. Now, this year, 21, he showed the exact opposite. He was out wide a lot and won in a lot of different versatile situations, which I do like. And the reason why I have him at 4 after addressing all these concerns and all these negative things is that he does have the size and strength to win physically. So, which compared to Parker and N'Keal Harry, they don't have this dude's size and strength. So I'm buying in one more time. But I swear, if this guy busts and then it's another next year it's another contested catch guy, I'm I'm not touching
him. Fair enough. But he's pretty damn special. So I mean, he's made some remarkable catches. Just hoping that landing spot's going to be nice. So behind him, and we talked about Jameson Williams at wide receiver 6. My 6, 7, and 8. I mean, they're very, very interchangeable. I still lean to my pre-combine grade on David Bell being that guy that can succeed at the NFL level, even though it was really scary, some of the lackluster numbers he was putting up at the combine. I mean, we're talking mid-4.6s. We've seen wide receivers produce at that. I want to go back to the tape, and I'm going back to the tape, and I see this guy constantly open. I'm seeing him catch the ball in stride, making people miss, running after the catch, doing everything you ever could want a wide receiver to do. But it's still going to scare me a little bit, and I was thinking him, Dodson, Olave, they're very interchangeable with my grade. What do we think about those 3 players, and am I missing someone that should be up a little bit higher?
Yeah, no, I love David Bell. I think he graded out for me as wide receiver 5, but I ranked him at wide receiver 7. So I like how he wins. Like I said, he wins with his feet and he wins in a lot of different ways. The athletic ability caps his upside for me. So I'm with you on those concerns. He can still be a fancy producer. I don't think he'll ever be a top tier producer. So I like him a lot. Love how he wins, and I love his game style. I just wish he was a little bit faster. And then with Jahan Dotson, he's like, no one's talked about him this offseason. And he was phenomenal. I mean, he didn't have a good college quarterback to throw to him. And he's an elite separator. He's a little lighter, sure. He doesn't really excel in contested catch situations. Like, absolutely. He definitely gives effort, but he just doesn't have the tool set to win in those.
I don't know, man. I've seen Dotson win some contested catches. I mean, even going back to like the 2020 Ohio State game, he can do. I mean, he's 5'10".
Yeah.
It's not gonna be it's not gonna be his best trait by any means. But I've seen Jahan Dotson get up there and maybe
No,
not just. He has good eye-hand coordination, and he knows when to get his hands up, kind of like a little bit of like when AB was making a ton of contested catches, but he was only 5'10" and doesn't jump out of the gym.
Yeah, I love it. He's quick. And just by the way, I watched a lot of 2020 tape, and I felt like every time I was watching anyone's highlight tape, for example, it was always against Shaun Wade in 2020. I swear, everyone was torching Ohio State's secondary that year. I just thought it was ironic.
It was against Shaun Wade, but you got to think back then, Wade was considered a high-end draft pick. Wade, everybody thought he was going to leave for the 2020 draft, but ended up coming back and ruined his draft stock, actually. Yeah, everybody goes back to the Clemson playoff game when he got kicked out of the game. Everybody thought like that's the reason why they lost. And then Shaun Wade just gets smoked left and right. And I think he was ended up being like a 6th-round pick or something. Yeah. But let's not pour it on him. I want to go back to David Bell because we are watching some of the highlights right here. And, you talk about size, speed, and everything like that. And, maybe it caps his production. If he ends up like in the right system, like a la Cooper Kupp, like a lot of the same things. Cooper Kupp's not running past anybody, but what he does do is he's like always full speed. Like he never has to gear up to his 4.65. He seems like he jumps out of the gate at 4.65. And yeah, he's not going to outrun and kill your safeties when they have leverage or anything like that. But when he's destroying your corner on the outside and catching some of these passes against a really good Iowa defense or whoever like that, I think it does translate. He doesn't have to be this 4.4 guy to win.
Really? Yeah.
But it does cap him a little bit as an NFL prospect. But think about it in your fantasy drafts. The right spot for him, the right system, with maybe a little kind of like St. Brown with Detroit last year. You give him volume, he is going to produce. I have no doubt about that. He was one guy damn, I wanted him to run a little faster, but I didn't move him down my rankings because of the scouting combine. I just didn't because this tape, we're watching it. And of course it's just the highlights. We don't have time to just watch every play of a certain game or anything like that, but he's winning constantly against good competition, showing how he can win in multiple different ways on the outside, run after catch, on screen plays. And he is beating people deep, here and there. He's not going to be the Jameson Williams, obviously. You don't have to be a productive wide receiver. Get him in the right spot. I don't want to keep harping on it, but please don't end up in Detroit or Philadelphia or somewhere like that. Then he could kind of get sucked into kind of the averageness of his I guess, physical skills.
I would actually love him at the Patriots, for example, because they don't have a guy, but they're willing to throw it short. And I feel like he's just going to be a first down machine for them if he goes to the Patriots.
Yeah, 100%. Reminds me, Reggie Wayne was not a guy that jumped out of the building or ran a 4.4, but he ended up with Peyton Manning and put up, just amazing stats. Same type of body control, same type of skill set right there. I'm not calling him, a 10,000 yard at the end of his career guy, but this guy's gonna produce. I'm sure of it. He's the guy that's probably gonna get forgotten about in your fantasy drafts.
Absolutely. I think he's gonna fall to rookie drafts. I'm in a single quarterback league, it's my hometown league. I'm thinking he's falling to the mid-second, and I'm gonna love him there. I think he's gonna be a value. He's one of the safest guys you can pick. Honestly, you can feel really good about that pick there.
100%. So, we talked about Dotson, Olave. I'm a Miami Hurricane fan. I hate bragging about all the Ohio State wide receivers because they're coming out by the dozens. It seems like Garrett Wilson's my second. Olave is an amazing route runner. He's never going to be a contested catch guy, but he creates great separation, has good speed, little skinny. I'm gonna be worried about him going across the middle, but he's a guy that he has NFL production really all over him. And, we've seen Darnell Mooney, the same type of skill set, same type of size. I think that's probably my best NFL comparison for Chris Olave. And don't get me wrong, Darnell Mooney is a stud. I just think maybe like Olave comes in as a fourth-year senior. He's a finished product. Like, exactly what you have with Chris Olave, and it's nice. I just don't know if you're going to see like the ceiling of a wide receiver one.
No, I'm with you. I'm lower on Olave than probably almost everybody out here. He's my wide receiver. Look again, 10. He's my wide receiver 10. There's just a long history of first round late declares that don't succeed in the NFL. And on top of that, he's great. Like, he gets up, he's athletic, he is fantastic at the catch point. Even though he's like undersized as far as like NFL terms go for, he kills it there. But I don't think he has any yak ability, and that's where I feel like a lot of the NFL is going towards, is running after the catch. And to me, he's more of a catch and fall down guy. Now, that's just for 2021. For 2020, he had a lot more versatile uses, a lot more flashes of production, like a lot more. He just showed a lot more. And this last year, I don't. Here's my thing: is that last year everyone's talking about him being a second round pick. This year, I don't think he's shown any type of improvement to warrant a first round pick. But that's where everyone's like posting him up as like a first round wide receiver. And I don't see the improvement from last year. And the usage this year is really disappointing for me. And I hope that whatever NFL team he goes to uses him the way he was used in 2020.
So you got him 10th. Who do you have ahead of him that I don't? I'll bring up my rankings in a second, but who do you have ahead of him? Because that someone you jumped him. Is it Christian Watson?
Yeah,
Maybe.
I got two. I got Skye Moore above him, and I have Khalil Shakir.
Oh, big Shakir fan. So
Huge.
I like it, and I had to go back a little bit on him, and like he's really crisp player. Like he is nice. I like it. Someone that really jumped out at the combine. I was like, damn, he looks good. He looks good in and out of his routes. He had nice size, not great size, but after the catch, maybe dominating in the slot. I mean, he really reminded me of St. Brown from Detroit.
Yeah, so I like Khalil Shakir a lot here. He's a G5 prospect, so I was really nervous. Going to the Senior Bowl, he definitely showed the ability to win against those corners there. There's tons of him doing one-on-ones against Kobe Bryant, who's considered a day two corner, and he's out there beating Kobe Bryant, so I feel pretty good about him. He's used in the slot. He's used out wide. He's used as a running back. He's used as the kick returner, the punt returner. So he's used everywhere for Boise, and I feel bad for that offense next year because I think they're going to take a huge step back without him. But he's got I'm just going to talk about his highlight reel. He's got an amazing highlight reel where he's making insane catches, but not only that, he's making insane plays after the catch as well. He's just a playmaker that they clearly want to get the ball in their hands. And I think Khalil Shakir here is going to be a steal. And of course, this is going to be draft cap driven come post draft, but I'm definitely expecting him to go in like the mid third. Like that's kind of where I have him pegged at. And I think he's going to be a producer no matter where he goes.
He could definitely find himself in day two. I feel it. Let's talk about Skye Moore and Christian Watson real quick. Some of the guys we didn't see play against good competition. Skye Moore, I even tweeted out about a month ago, and I was like, y'all are too low on Skye Moore, and I'm y'all. Like, seriously, I had to jump on the Skye Moore bandwagon. Reminds me a lot of Golden Tate. I think that's a really good comparison. Really strong after the catch, route runner. We haven't seen it against the high-end competition. We didn't get to see him at the Senior Bowl, so it's kind of a projection. Talked about Olave. I feel Olave is a finished project. I think the opposite of Skye Moore. Like Skye Moore, we could see him, end up there. There's a various amount of outcomes for Skye Moore. I think he could be really high end, or maybe, he doesn't adjust against the higher competition like we're all hoping. But you obviously are high on him. You have him above Olave. Let's hear a little bit about Skye Moore.
I do. Skye Moore here is my wide receiver 6. And he's definitely somebody that I'll probably drop in rankings depending on where he lands. Because he is a smaller guy at 5'10", 195. He blew out the combine, which I think is why his draft capital will jump up to like the mid-second, I'm thinking. But anyway, he was a cornerback going into college. He wasn't a wide receiver at all, 0% in high school. And so he's only been playing the position for 3 years, and he's been putting on an absolute clinic in the MAC. Now, everyone knows the MAC doesn't have any defensive players worth noting. So it is a concern about level of competition. And when you see his release off the line, he's like a one-trick pony. If you look at any tape whatsoever, it's the same exact move every single time. Always works. So good for him. But that's my main concern for him at the next level is if his one trick doesn't work. But besides that, he excels at everything. I mean, he's great. He has great hands. And I asked our analytical team, I hope they look into it. But this is one thing I look at, but I don't know if it correlates to anything. It's just always something I want to make note of. I look at the completion percentage of like a team's respective quarterback, and I look at someone's catch rate percentage. Skye Moore's catch rate percentage to compare to his quarterback completion percentage is like a 15% difference. It's something insane.
Wow.
So like just on paper, that's telling me that this dude's making crazy adjustments to get this ball into his hands, and he's like a little on the smaller side. But he's an athletic freak. So I like Skye Moore a lot. I think he'll be super successful at the next level. I'm not sure how successful, but I'm pretty sure he will definitely make his roster and be like the wide receiver 2 wherever he goes, type of deal. So I like Skye. Sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit. And I had to get hip to him, but man, I think he can be special. And I heard a little rumor. I heard some rumors that KC really likes him. Right. We've seen them do some crazy stuff at the end of that first round with Edwards-Helaire. So, Skye Moore at the end of the first round, who knows? I wouldn't do it, but I heard KC really loves him, and he could be maybe the player they see that fit possibly in that Tyreek role. Obviously not the 4.2 type guy, but he's a legit – what do you run, 4.3A as a combine? I mean, I don't trust any of those combine runs, honestly, but he showed plenty enough speed, and it matched – at the combine and his tape. So
right. Hey, let me ask you a question real quick, Zach.
Okay.
In the last 10 years, there's only been one G5 wide receiver that was an early declare. Do you know who it was?
Only one?
Only one.
In the last 10 years.
Oh, sorry. That got drafted between day 1 and 2. Forgot to add that.
That got drafted in the first 2 days.
Yes.
G5. Oh man. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank, man. Let me know.
It's Devonte Adams.
Devonte Adams. Okay.
That's it. So Skye Moore right now is fitting that mold. Not saying he's Devonte Adams, but I think it's very important to note that somebody from the G5 who doesn't get a lot of cameras, people don't look at him because he's not from Ohio State or Alabama, but he's getting that type of attention, and then he just destroyed the combine. So he's definitely on teams' radars now.
Oh yeah, he's going day 2, if not earlier. Like he's not getting out of the 3rd round. No chance, no way in hell. What about Christian Watson? Where's he at on your totem pole?
I'm low. I have to.
How low?
I think I want to say 15.
Okay, that's not too bad. That's not too bad because, you see it 6'4", 205, pretty legit 4'3", probably 4'4" guy. The wingspan, the after the catch stuff he showed in college against a subpar competition, but he just seemed like he was miles ahead of everybody physically. He's very raw. He's very raw. He is not going to step in day 1 and win on the outside at wide receiver. It's just not happening. We did not see it. We don't see it enough out there. He won with kind of his athleticism. They got him the ball in a lot of like Deebo Samuel type positions. We hear it so much, but they ran screens for him. They ran reverses. They got the ball in his hands. And when he had the ball in his hands, he was just that much better than everybody out there. But the ceiling, he's a ceiling rank for me. I have him at the start of my tier 3 above some guys I really like. But he's a ceiling rank for me that he's more of a day 2 guy. He's a project, but a project that could give you a huge reward.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I personally wasn't a big fan of his tape. I saw a lot of timing issues. I thought athletically, like you said, he is gifted. Like, he is definitely top tier in athletics. I just thought he actually had trouble getting timing on throwing going on, and he's a playmaker with the ball in his hands, but it's really dicey to get the ball into his hands, and that's my concern with him. He's a 5th-year wide receiver, and I'm not a big fan of project wide receivers. I don't like to bet on them because I actually went back and checked. I have him wide receiver 13. I like the athleticism. I just think that at the next level, he's either going to be a 100% bust or he's going to be a stud. I don't think he's like anywhere in between. I don't think there's going to be any in between for him there. So And I can't remember the last time that I heard of someone like a project wide receiver working out. I think a lot about Denzel Mims. He destroyed the combine. Was supposed to be an athletic freak, and then he's nothing.
You know what? That's a pretty damn good comparison. That's one of the outcomes for him. Like some of these players, like I said, I know exactly what Olave is going to be, and I have a pretty damn good idea what Garrett Wilson and David Bell are going to be. But Christian Watson has a range of outcomes that not every single one of them turns out to be an NFL wide receiver. So I'm a little bit worried about him. I had to update my rank. I had my old rankings up. I'm actually kind of mad about that. Not too many things are changed, but Christian Watson did go up my rankings
Okay.
after Senior Bowl and then again after Combine. I mean, he's at the top of tier 3. So I have Christian Watson 10, Skye Moore 11. They're like I said, they have some good outcomes, they have some bad outcomes, but they both have a lot of potential. And I look, when I'm thinking the NFL draft, I'm thinking ceiling plays a lot, and they have a high ceiling because they are remarkable athletes.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think postseason I had him wide receiver 27, and then come Senior Bowl, I think I moved up to 15, and then post combine I moved like 2 guys down, and he got up to 13. So I'm with you.
So I got him at 10. We're right around the same. Here's a guy. Justin Ross is my 12th guy, right behind Skye Moore. In and out on Justin Ross.
Okay, I'm out on Justin Ross. I'm like way out. But I get why people are in though. Like he was an elite prospect as a freshman. He absolutely just lit the world on fire. But since his injury, like I love the story. So I hate talking bad about him. I love the story how he was supposed to be a career ender. He overcame that adversity. He came back. And I know a lot of people want to place the blame of that on DJU, but when you watch the tape, I'm like, his receivers aren't doing him any favors either. Like both sides of that ball is not helping out each other. And I can understand that he's still recovering from his injury, but his pro day numbers are pretty poor too. So he's still not, back to what he was.
He set the bar so high, and then everything after it, like I've seen a lot of, and you don't want to hate it. Like I said, a neck injury, but he showed a lot of lazy tape last year. He wasn't creating separation, and then I seen some balls he wasn't going really hard for, and then you see him make a great play. So you say the potential's there. He's still in my tier 3, but he's a guy I think he's going to go in the third round, and he might go a little bit overdrafted in your fantasy drafts because everybody thinks about that 2019 film where he was the best player on the field against Alabama, scoring 75-yard touchdowns, and he just did not come back from the injury the same guy. He's just a red zone type threat for me. I don't know. I'm not going to get too excited about his NFL prospects. It's just I'm not.
What if he goes like round 4? I think he's going to go round 4 personally, but what if he goes round 4 for you? Will you drop him?
I mean, he could. I mean, if he goes round 4 and it's not a great situation and he's at the bottom of the depth chart, I just don't know if he's the type of guy that he's obviously going to have to need volume. He's going to need the red zone threats. He's going to have to build trust with the quarterback. And if he doesn't get the draft capital to go with it, I don't think the tape matches. And I don't think the way he wins in the NFL, it goes back a little bit to like Drake London, and it's kind of the same type, but not to he's not as polished as Drake London. He's not as solid and consistent as Drake London, but it's like he's going to have to win on contested catches. And guess what? It takes 2 to tango, and you need a really good quarterback to put you in the right position to make those contested catches if you're not creating separation. And he can be a physical freak. He's one of those guys that can play above the rim. It's just you need a quarterback to get you in the situations when like that. I'm not trusting it. I think he goes. I still think he goes day 3, but really late day 3.
Yeah, I think he goes day 3 as well. Like 4th, 5th round. I think some GM's going to be like, we'll put him on the depth chart. We'll try to, rehab him back to what he was. But
did I say day 3? I meant day 2. I meant like third round.
Okay.
I think he goes third round, late third round, pick 75 plus. I think that's where he kind of goes between 75 and 100. I got Windale Robinson at 14. I've actually moved him down 5'8", 175 pounds. Can he win on the outside? He won on the outside last year, but I'm not buying that he can at the NFL. Mike, am I doing him dirty? Am I doing Robinson dirty?
No, I think you got him right. I got him at 11. I just couldn't deny that he won against like SEC corners and other teams too. He's a consistent winner. I do factor in a lot of size into my rankings too. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, you can't discount somebody because we haven't seen anyone play like that before. And it's like, that's exactly why I'm discounting him, because I haven't seen anyone play successfully at that level, like with that size. So I think he's gonna be relegated to the slot, which is fine. But when it comes to guys that are undersized for me, and undersized for me personally is if they're below 185 pounds and they're below 5'10", either or, sometimes both. If they're undersized for me, I need them to be like athletically gifted, and I don't have Windale Robinson as like athletically gifted.
So I think he gets the draft capital that you're kind of looking for. I think
Yes.
it's a day two draft capital, but I think he's a better person, a better player in real life than he's going to be in fantasy. I just don't ever see the fantasy production. He's always going to be a kind of a trick, like a trick pony out there that you're just showing off, you're running screens with, and you just don't, you can't correlate that with production. His size, you just can't. Like you haven't, like Steve Smith even was 5'9" and was, I mean, he was physical on the outside. Robinson's never going to be that. He's going to be a guy that probably, he might even go in the second, probably in the third, and will be a nice addition to any offense. You're going to have to game plan for him, but he's not the guy you want in your starting lineup every single week in Dynasty or in fantasy football at all. It's just, he's going to be a better player to play with on Madden than to put in your fantasy team. It's just, it's facts. And I like the player. I really do. It's just not going to, he's not going to produce in the NFL like you're going to want him to.
Right. Yeah. But he's a great route runner though, and he's shown ability to win. So I don't know,
I know
man.
I like so much about him, but it's like if I don't think you can win on the outside ever, like you're going down my rankings. I'm sorry, you're very limited. So that's like my tier three.
Okay.
Any thoughts on Romeo Dubs before we get to tier four and finish this off, brother?
I like Dubs. I really did. He was one of the guys at the Senior Bowl. Let's keep my eye on to see if he could win. On against against Power Five corners. And I just saw way too many clips of Power Five corners putting the clamps on him. So I'm a little bit out on Romeo Dubs. He's gonna make a team. I think he's gonna go in the fourth round. I think he's gonna fall to the fourth round. But yeah, I'm out on Dubs being a fantasy
Reminds me,
producer.
remember like Alan Hearns a couple years ago for the Jaguars. Like he's just like a guy, like Hollywood Higgins type player. Like he's going to be on your roster. You don't want him to be your wide receiver one or two. You probably, he's better wide receiver three, maybe even four. He's a guy that's just he's gonna be nice. He's gonna be an NFL player for multiple years. He can do some nice things, nice size, nice speed, nothing great. Doesn't do anything like out of this world. And he got Debo'd a couple times at the Senior Bowl, and I did take notice.
Yeah.
Like he had a couple really bad reps that went kind of viral, like that were going around Twitter and going around the NFL draft guys. And I take he got jacked a couple times at the line, so I take that into account. He had a really good college quarterback. I actually really like Carson Strong. Was putting him in some really good situations. He's nice, but he's my wide receiver 15. This is where I was talking about, like, to me, these top three tiers are really good compared to maybe the top three tiers of last year or next year or whatever. But after this, it really falls off for me. Maybe I'm a little low on Calvin Austin, but it's going to be in the same lines of what we were talking about, Windale Robinson. Is he going to be big enough to ever win on the outside? I don't think he's as dynamic with the ball in his hand as Robinson. That's why he's a little bit farther behind. Alec Pierce is a guy that I want to get in on.
Okay.
Size, speed, athleticism, it's all there. I mean, it is all there, but is the tape there? Does the tape follow it? What do you think?
No, I don't think so. He ran a lot of go routes here too. For Cincinnati, he just doesn't have the ability to separate. And if you watch his tape, that's what you're going to see a lot of. You're going to see a lot of contested catch situations. I love the size, athleticism, but for me, he just profiles as like a really fast tight end. That's what I see in his tape. So I'm not there on Alec Pierce. I don't think he can separate, and contested catch guys do not succeed in fantasy.
Yeah, you don't see the speed. You don't see the speed on tape. You don't see that sub 4.4 speed. You don't really see, like, I heard he was going to jump 40 inches, and he did, and that's very impressive. Don't get me wrong, but you're not seeing him just like moss people on the outside. You see a nice player, but you don't ever see separation. You're right. You're like, where's the speed? The speed does not translate on tape. The athleticism does not translate on tape. and then he's kind of just like I really like what you said, just like a small tight end, or that's how he runs routes. He's not beating corners consistently, getting open, and that's the first thing I look for at a wide receiver. I want to see you break down college corners, because if you can't break down a college corner, you are not going to break down an NFL corner, not once, not one single time.
Yeah, I'm with you. And at the G5 level too. Now, Zach, we did skip somebody in your second tier, by the way. I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, is a guy I really likes, Jalen Tolbert. Is that who you're talking about? Yeah, Jalen Tolbert. He's right there in the middle of my tier 3, but he's got some juice. He was oh my god, I loved him late in my C2C. I mean, I had my wide receivers were goated in my C2C last year, and they really were. And Jalen Tolbert was a late pick who I thought had some NFL potential, but was going to put up a lot of production in college, and he did, and he put out some great tape. He put some great tape up against Tennessee, and I think he jumped up some people's boards because of that game. And are you a big fan of him?
I'm not personally. He's like Dubs, but with draft capital, where he does like everything well. Like nothing too flashy, but like, he does everything well. He doesn't really win physically, and for somebody his size, 6'1", 195, you'd expect him to be a little more physical at the catch point and win those more often, but he doesn't. But I actually like that he came in. So initially he was a 6'3" guy, like on paper, but weighed in at heighted at 6'1", measured at 6'1". I like that more for him.
I think he has a little bit more burst than Dubs. That's why he's slightly above. I think you see that separation down the field a little bit more than with Dubs. He can make some contested catches. He's a guy that he could be that sneaky guy who lands in that perfect situation in the early third round, who produces early. I think he's kind of a finished product. I'm pretty sure he was a 4-year player. Am I right?
That's correct. Yeah.
He's a 4-year player. I think he's pretty polished. He's going to come up and I think he's going to be ready to produce. Maybe not as a wide receiver too, but I think he can be in somebody's lineup. Not fantasy lineup, somebody's wide receiver lineup, and possibly, start getting production and volume pretty early if he ends up in the right situation. I think my comparison was a Marvin Jones comp. What do you think about that?
Interesting. Isn't Marvin Jones a lot? I think Marvin Jones is a lot faster, a lot skinnier though, isn't he? Like a little more of a speedster side.
Nah, Marvin Jones.
Am I getting that wrong?
I don't know. Was he 6'1", 205? I think. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. Marvin Jones, you see him a lot of contested catches. Maybe back in his younger days, maybe his Cincinnati days, he had a little bit more speed. But
oh no, you're right. You're right on the size.
Tolbert Tolbert, I think, has plenty of speed. I think you might be downgrading him a little bit. I think he's plenty fast.
Yeah, I'm a little bit out on. I'm not out. Sorry, the jury's out on him still. So I guess I'm kind of just waiting for draft capital and landing spot there. So he's somebody that can jump up my board. I got him at 14 right now, but like might be a disservice. But I'm not out on him. It looks like I'm out, but I'm not.
Yeah, we are really similar, man. I mean, we're really similar with these rankings. I think I'm a lot lower on Shakir than you.
Everybody is. It's okay.
I got him at 16. We're very similar, man. You know what? We skipped someone that's in my tier 2.
Yeah. John Mechie.
Before we get to sleepers, I want to hit on a couple sleepers.
Okay.
Because we're going on an hour and everything. But, what do we think about Mechie? Because he's a guy, as long as the health comes back, it's an ACL injury in late December. It's got to make you a little bit weary. But I'm confident he goes day 2. I think he goes early day 2. I think he's a second-round pick. And if he comes back from the injury, man, we're talking about someone that does create separation. Last year or the year before in 2020, he was like the deep threat for Mac Jones. I know they had Devonte Smith on the other side who was doing everything deep and, behind the line of scrimmage. But like, I was like, who is this new wide receiver Bama has that is like 5-10 yards behind every corner on almost every single play? And it was John Mechie. I think he gets a bad rap because Jameson came in there and balled so hard, and he was never the wide receiver 1. I think people are overlooking Mechie for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he's a refined product here. He's another one of those guys in that like David Bell category where I just don't know what his ceiling is. But I do think if he comes back healthy, he's going to be like a team's like wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2, probably 3 for me. and he's going to be a consistent actual like option in the NFL. But for fantasy, I think he has a cap ceiling. And you just said he's the wide receiver 2 for Alabama. I think it was Miguel Compton on Twitter. It came out with a stat last year. It has to be redone, but it was like if you were a wide receiver 2 all your years in college, you had a 2% chance of putting up like being the wide receiver 1 on the NFL level. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown just did it, so there's one example there. But
I mean, it was
it's a bit
behind
of
it
a
was
concern.
behind Devonte Smith, and you're behind Jameson Williams. I don't. Reggie Wayne was the number 2 to Santana Moss at Miami. I mean,
Yeah,
it's happened. I mean, I think that's just Ronnie Brown and Cadillac Williams were both top 5 picks. I mean, it's going to be it's out. I'm gonna trust film and tape other than that analytic stat right there, just because
right,
it's different players for it's Alabama.
right, yeah,
It's Alabama, just like you said with Ohio State. I mean, Jameson Williams was the wide receiver 4 last year for Ohio State. How many wide receiver 4s in their college careers ever were first round picks? You can go back with almost any stat on that, but on the field, like we've seen it. I mean, the play that beat Auburn. I mean, he took who was it? What's the corner from Auburn? McCreary.
McCreary.
I mean, he took him behind the shed and just humiliated him and won the game on a stutter route that went back into the outside. And that's everything I need to know. That's a first round type corner on Auburn. He put him on skates on the biggest play of the game, and he was 5 yards open when they were at the 5-yard line. He was so open, it wasn't even funny, and it was for the game. Give me Mechie. Give me the separation I've seen him do. He's not big. He's not a contested catch guy, but give me a wide receiver that is always open with good hands, and I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder coming into the NFL. I'm really excited about him. Him and David Bell are going to be I feel like the wide receivers I'm kind of feasting on in fantasy drafts.
Yeah, the values for sure. Yeah, I don't have him too far off from you. You have him at 9. I have him at 12, so we're not too far off.
I think he's in the same tier as Olave. I think he's in the same tier as Dodson. I mean, I could maybe separate my tier 2 into maybe the bottom half and front half, which I've thought about. And the closer I get to the draft, I'll get a little bit more specific, I think, in my tiers, because the only thing that Dotson, Olave, Mechie, like they all create a lot of separation, but they're smaller guys. They're not above the rim guys like Pickens and Drake London, and even Jameson has a little bit more size and length. So maybe that's where that tier is. Maybe I would tier those out a little bit and make 2 tiers. But Mechie's a guy that, like, man, watch him go to a sleeper position. Watch him possibly even be healthy. I heard the rehab's going really good. Maybe be healthy, maybe a little bit earlier than a lot of people are expecting, and end up in one of those premium situations. And you get the volume right away because, get him on the field. I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. I think that wide receiver 2 stuff is kind of nonsense. He's a wide receiver 1 on 99.9% of teams.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, man, we've really gone in depth. We're about an hour in. Anybody we haven't talked about? Any sleepers that we haven't got to talk about that we need to get on everybody's radar?
Yeah, let's do some lightning sleepers here real quick. I want to talk about 2 guys I'm high on. I mean, I think they can get like early day 3 draft capital, and if that's the case, like I'll take them back into my rookie drafts, and I'm probably looking to flip a profit as soon as they flash a little. You know how it goes when
the
hype goes, midseason hype. But that for me is going to be Kyle Phillips. I think he's going to be like a real technician, like route runner here. I feel like he's going to be a Hunter Renfrow type. I like that a lot, and I like Charleston Rambo a lot too. Those are my 2 sleepers here that I like a lot. They're probably, I think, my like 16, 17 or somewhere around there range. But they're guys that I think they can make an impact. They can make the team. They can be on the starting roster. They're probably going to be like 2 3s on the team. But if they flash and like, how Twitter gets, the Twitter hype chain gets, I'm looking to cash out right away.
Yeah, I like Rambo. I watched every single game last year for Miami, and I think people are a little down that he transferred from Oklahoma, but just to get a better opportunity. But I mean, he put on some really good film, and he has some nice length. He has some nice size, good speed. I was expecting better numbers at his combine and everything. He's one of the guys that didn't run crazy, so that little suspect right there. But he's a guy that shows he gets in and out of routes really well, and create some good separation with a good frame. I mean, I think you hit it right on the head. He has round 4 written all over him. Phillips, I mean, he's a really good route runner. I just don't know. He has to be in the right situation, like the Hunter Renfro, to maybe produce at the fantasy level. But he's going to get himself drafted. He runs really good routes. I mean, way too good of routes to not get drafted or make somebody's lineup. What do you think about Makai Polk from Mississippi State? He's
I
a
think
guy. I
he's
think.
sorry.
Yeah,
I think he's okay. Oh, sorry. My bad. My bad. Go ahead, Zach.
no, man. I think is one of the guys I'm thinking ceiling. Like we only seen him for like a year, and I thought Jaden Wally was going to be like the go-to guy for Mississippi State. And I was getting pissed every week because I was starting him, and I was like, why is Wally not going off? And like I was like, who's this Polk guy? Who's this Polk guy? And then by midseason, I'm like, all right, he's legit. Him and Rambo have about the same size, but I think Polk's a little bit more twitchy. They threw him around. He was running some slot routes. He was running some outside routes. He has some. He's a nice ceiling play. One of those guys that could go in the 4th round. That somehow you're like, where did he come from when he's producing and putting up some really good NFL stats and some really good tape of how this guy lasts the day 3.
Yeah, I like Polk. I'm trying to look at my film grades for him right now. I just gave him like average stuff across the board. I didn't see a lot of stuff that I liked a lot. I didn't see anything I hated either. I like, fun fact, he's like the only early declare that's not being given like a day 2, day 1 grade coming out this year. So that's interesting. But yeah, I don't have much to say about Makai Polk. Mississippi State has a high volume offense. I've been waiting for them in college to get like one alpha, one something to just showcase because they're a high volume offense. But anyway.
I thought that could have been Wally last year,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping next year maybe Polk gets out of the way and they have to maybe force it to him a little bit. Wally's not a big guy. He's more of a like 5'11", more like a Garrett Wilson size. But I really liked what I saw his freshman season, and then he
Right.
kind of took a backdoor to Polk last year, kind of like we were talking about Mechie. We thought he was going to be the one, and he wasn't because a transfer came in and kind of took over the wide receiver room. It happens, and maybe that's why I like Polk that much too, because he kind of just came into a new situation and was just kind of their alpha last year. He was the go-to. I mean, he had some big reception games. He had like multiple 8, 9, 10 catch games, and we're talking SEC play, SEC West, so he's playing against some good competition. Not a finished guy. He's a guy that's a ceiling reach right there. Other than that, man, there's not too many guys that really intrigue me late. Like it's a lot of I was really in on Mooney 2 years ago, and last year I thought there was a lot of wide receivers that intrigued me that were going to go day 3. Like it doesn't seem to be there this year. So I'm thinking these guys in like my tier 5. I'm not really excited about really any of them. And I don't know if any of them have the draft capital to maybe sway my view and get into like the 3rd round. I'm not seeing it. Trey Turner from Virginia Tech has some speed a little bit. Like Slay Bolden could be that slot guy that comes out of nowhere and catches a lot of passes, like a Cole Beasley or Hunter Renfro or whatever. But I'm really out on the tier 5, and I'm not really too far in the tier 4. These top tier 3 guys, the top 16 wide receivers, I think are head and shoulders better than anybody behind him.
I'll throw one more name out there. I like Danny Gray. The reports that came out from the Senior Bowl weren't positive, but he was on my radar before that. Showed out well in the combine too. So I think maybe he can get that like early day 3 draft capital. But Danny Gray was on my radar. He's kind of a speedster and not really refined product, but he's just a guy, but he's a guy with athletics.
Yeah, he has a ton of athletics. Oh, who was it from Georgia Tech that got drafted last year? That's who I think I comped him to.
Jalen Camp, I think. Isn't that?
Yeah, Jalen Camp, exactly. Like someone that's just like, holy shit, he's big, and holy shit, he's fast. Gray's not as big, but like I didn't see it. I was a big Reggie Roberson fan, and we didn't see him come back from his injury the way. So Danny Gray, he had a couple games, very inconsistent. He's a guy. He didn't make my top 35, but he's a guy that could easily jump one of these tier 5 guys and get drafted above them. I just don't ever see him being consistent enough to really do anything. But when you see size and speed in the later rounds, I mean, NFL teams are probably going to lean towards that for a project. He's definitely more of a ceiling play than some of these other guys. So this has been fun, man. Dirty Mike putting up some dirty wide receiver talk, dude. I love it. And we didn't. I don't know. Did we disagree on too much?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not really big on Olave personally, but
Yeah, I mean, I got him 8th. I'm not either, man. So we're kind of on the same phase. We're on the same kind of tiers, man. The wide receiver class, guys, is really solid this year, and you're gonna be. I mean, they're gonna dominate the rookie drafts. They really are. Like the David Bells and the Dodsons or something. You're gonna see a lot of these guys dominate after the top 3 running backs go, and the quarterbacks is kind of iffy. You're gonna see wide receivers go really high this year, and I'm excited for it. Tell everybody where they can find you again, man, and then we're gonna head and probably cut it out.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can find me on Twitter at ff_dirtymike. Find my work at campscan.com. Check us out. Check out the format. It's going to be a mainstream thing in a couple years here for sure. And just a final message, you guys are way too low on Khalil Shakir.
Go get him. Go get him. Shakir. Tupac Shakir. No. Hey, it's been great. This is Roster Rescue. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you next time.